You go, Jesse. All right. Off we go. Good evening. Welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting of February 24th, 2025 here in Memorial Hall and Town Hall. This is our 21st meeting of fiscal 2025. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the location in the posted agenda, and it is possible that all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the link in the posted agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28, Charter Channel 192, or via Westborough TV's online platforms at westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/WestboroughTV. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Westborough TV, and we thank them for their help on that. One announcement to make is one of our guests tonight is unable to attend, Christy Williams, feeling under the weather, and so she will attend our Thursday meeting where we will discuss the various articles that we're going to get information from her instead. But the good news is we have Jim Ball here today from the Community Preservation Committee. They have put, I guess this is the first budget, right?
We did it in the fall to catch up 24 and 25, but now we're trying to get on
Okay.
for the spring.
So why don't you come on up and tell us what you're going to do. This is related to currently Article 10 in Draft 4 of the warrant.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate your invitation. Pretty straightforward. Essentially, Article 10, as you alluded to, for the community preservation budget. Each year, the Act requires that we allocate the funds to certain buckets that are essentially the areas that the Act was created to help fund and support. And then it also allows for an allocation to an administrative bucket that covers expenses. So that allows up to 5%. It requires that 10% each be allocated to the open space basket, the community housing, and the historic resources. And then the remainder we allocate to a general budget that can be used for any of those areas. And so, Walter, as you alluded to, in the fall, we came forth because the committee had just been put together last year after the town approved it, and allocated funds that had been collected for 24 and 25, which were combined funds of about $854,000 in the existing accounts. And what we're trying to do now is get on the schedule for the spring every year. That's what Christy would prefer. So this is for fiscal 26. As you would imagine, it's an estimate that we have from John. We don't have the final number from the state until late in the year, about November. That is based on the number of mortgage applications. That fee comes from filing fees at the registry. So we don't get that final number until late in the year. But they give us an estimate effectively from prior years. And so, again, this year, we're electing to allocate 5% to the administrative expenses of $26,100, to the budgeted general bucket, $339,300, and then to each of the three open space, community housing, and historic buckets, $52,200. All right, and then that'll be trued up once we get the number at the end of the year from the state for their contribution. And so those funds will be combined with the existing funds that have been funded from 24 and 25. All right. Just to give you a quick update on the committee was finally established, and we've been working to complete the Westborough's plan, which I think we have a final draft for our March meeting. We just received comments back from the state coalition, who's been giving us some guidance on this. And so we're hoping to have that completed in March or April at the latest, so that we will be ready this summer The time for receiving requests is late summer into early fall, such that we can have committee approvals for the following spring meeting. And so, with these year's funds and the prior 2 years' funds, we'll have just shy of about $1.4 million. So we're hopeful we can start to do some pretty meaningful things, depending on what requests we get. And that's what we're hoping to be prepared to do for the summertime. I think that's the gist of it, Walter. Any questions?
So I guess the first question is, so far to date, we haven't spent
We have
any.
not.
And can you just go through the process of how the money how it could be spent? I think it has to come back to town meeting, but
It does.
If
So
you could
we're
just review that for us.
happy to do that. So as part of the plan, we're completing the application. It will state, the plan lists out exactly what the options are and what is allowed under the plan, and it's with regard to those areas that I mentioned that is funded. And so what we're doing is we're creating 2 sets of applications, a simple application which someone can come forth with a brief description of their project so that we can determine it is actually eligible under the Act. And if indeed it passes that first test, there's a much more detailed application that we'll be able to provide that shortly, which asks for all the information we feel would be necessary for the committee to decide whether to bring it forward. If the committee approves it, it then is brought to town meeting for approval, and town meeting can either approve it, reduce it, they can't choose to increase it, and that's what determines if it's actually ultimately funded. So it first has to be approved by committee, and then will be brought to town meeting for town meeting approval or denial.
And you're expecting the first ones to be in March of 26?
I'd be shocked if we don't get requests. So we'll be prepared this summer to open our first bid, request period. And the word is certainly that there are lots of folks out there that have ideas. We'll have to be sure they're viable and that they pass what the Act requirements are. But that would be my expectation, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's going to be important to decide that they're not just fit the Act, but they're the best things we could do with the money, because
exactly
ostensibly this is the same as voting for things from scratch, except for we're getting a percentage adder to do these things.
One of the things we've done is within the plan, we've asked each of the areas in town, each of the committees that represent these areas, to kind of reiterate their present goals. Obviously, it references people to the master plan and several of the other recent studies. They're currently working on an updated open space plan. So each of those areas have had input and stated some of their highest priorities within the plan. And it's to that effect, Walter. These are the priorities, so please focus on these areas. Certainly people can make requests that the plan allows, and then it's up to the committee to decide which we think are prudent and viable. And then ultimately the town's decision.
Right. Yeah, I mean, given the sort of budget discussions we're having now, part of me is a little disappointed that we just started this, but we can't use this. We won't be using this fund to somehow defray something that otherwise is in the budget this year, because it's not in that sort of time frame.
We just didn't pass it done,
right.
Essentially. So.
Is there any possibility that something could come to fall town meeting?
Well, there is an allowance for items that are urgent. For instance, like an open space purchase of land that might have a limit of time on it. So special circumstances where something's coming up that has a deadline, so to speak, we would consider that potentially, but it has to be for that type of reason. Otherwise, we'd like it to follow in the regular process for the spring.
Okay, sorry, I'm monopolizing the conversation. Anybody else have questions?
So remind me the advantage of having this fund in terms of what's the state's portion that they contribute towards this?
I mean, I will say, Rod, it's definitely the smaller portion.
Yeah.
Lately what's happened is that's declined because it's determined, it's a percentage of each registration at the registry under mortgage financing and mortgage applications and home transfers. Higher interest rates, as we all know, have led to a much lower volume of sales and transactions. which has resulted in a little bit, the last couple of years anyway, lower contributions from the state. I will say last year came in a bit higher than expected because as rates came down, I think most people understand short-term rates are coming down. Mortgages, frankly, aren't coming down that much unless you're using an adjustable rate mortgage. But they did see a slight uptick. So the hope would be if mortgage rates settle back down and we start to see more transactions and turnover of homes, part of the issue there, of course, is just supply, as you know, in our area. That would continue to be a more significant portion. But without question, the majority is from the tax bill we elected a 0.5% excise tax on tax bills for our share of the town, which is the majority of the funds.
So
What was the percentages?
It's 0.5%.
No, the state contribution.
The dollar. You know what? I don't think I have the actual. Let's see. For 25, the estimate was 62,733 versus 469 from the town. I don't have the actual. It was just a couple of $1,000s higher. So it was roughly, I'm going to say $65,000, which was the matching portion to the 469 from the actual Westborough taxpayers. So 15%-ish.
Okay.
Not insignificant, but clearly the majority is from the town.
Yep.
My hope is that would grow. It was nearer 18 to 20% in, if I recall, kind of 18, 19 in the years where there was a lot lower rates and much more activity in the real estate space.
And I think that's why it's so important that we don't do things just because they fit into this, but we do things that we really want to do.
Right.
Because it's basically raising appropriated money in essence.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why we tried to include in the plan the priorities of each of the areas and of the town in general, and specifically are asking people to reference those items, those recent studies done, so that people understand, ideally they're bringing things forward and we're giving credit in the plan for things that address multiple areas. Mm-hmm. So if they address housing, but it's part of the master plan, it's part of housing's recent goals, you're going to get higher consideration than if it's just a one-off and it does not address those. So that's part of the nuance in the plan that's taken the most time, is how do we include and encourage people to bring forth projects that will support. One of the factors is how many of the constituents, is it a broad constituency that it supports, or is it a very narrow? And those are all things that are going to help us to score any given request over another. There'll be some art to it and some science. We'll do our best.
Gene, you had a question?
So, this is kind of might be a technical question, but the amounts are very specific, but they're also based on an estimate. So
yes.
What happens if the estimate is wrong? Well, we know the estimate's wrong. We just don't know.
So,
does
great
this
question,
have to come
Gene.
back in the fall?
Does
it get adjusted on a percentage basis?
It's percentages.
Okay,
yeah,
so you keep the ratios.
It's 5, 10, 10, and
Okay.
65. Correct. So the percent, it will ultimately, we're actually really choosing the percentage.
The percent, okay.
That's
all right.
correct. That's a great question.
That makes sense,
Yep.
then, I guess. Yeah.
That's exactly how it works.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead, Andrew.
So with regards to the administrative expenses here, I know that when this passed 4 months ago, we allocated about 24/7
Correct.
administrative.
Yes.
And here we're now looking at a whole budget for a whole year, and it's 26, so just
Correct.
about the same amount.
Yes.
So is that money apportioned from another position somewhere? So this is not really a matter of using it, or
What it is that there's a limit of 5% on that we can allocate up to. And so we just hired, it took several months. Our admin had left to go to actually a state job back in the fall, which slowed us down, unfortunately, in our process. And so we did just hire someone new. We're sharing that person with the historical committee. And so I think what you'll find is going forward, this allows for things like, if we're requesting studies, for instance, if we need to hire professionals to give us input on any of the requests, that's part of what this basket allows. It allows for us to pay our portion of that employee. That helps the committee as well. I think what we'll probably find, if we haven't needed to dip into it for any work to support our decision making, that we will probably reduce that And we're not obligated to fund, we are obligated to fund the 10% components to each of the other buckets at a minimum. We are not obligated to request the administration to the full every year. So if we don't need to draw it down, I suspect we'll request less for that going forward, but we're trying to establish a minimum there to cover those costs of the employee and other costs.
Sure, I guess maybe the question is, instead of just drawing it down, what happens to the money if it isn't used?
It falls into the general bucket.
Into the general bucket.
That's which can be used for any of the available grant choices. Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have another question?
I hesitate to ask this question, but because you probably can't answer it, and I'm only half.
If I can, I'll tell you.
I'm half joking, but can you buy fish with us?
Can we buy fish?
Can you
with
stock
this?
a pond with us?
I don't think that we could. I mean, recreation is an area, and so recreation and open space. I'd probably have to do a little homework on that one. So
I'm feeling bad for my vote, you know?
There you go. There you go. We can't justify the new motor for your vote, but that's a great question. I mean, my initial thought, but I would want to get some guidance, is that perhaps falls under recreation. Now, there's the perfect question. Does that serve a broad constituency or a narrow?
Very
broad. So we'd have to give that some thought. If it was to be available, that's where I would think it would fall. But that would be up to the whole committee.
Yeah, interesting. Good question. And also while we allocate into those buckets each year a minimum of 10%, there is no requirement to actually spend any percent in any particular thing till you have the right idea.
That's correct.
Right idea. Okay.
Yes, that can stay and grow. Yes.
Although it would seem that there'd be some incentive to do something out of the chute that people can see visibly good, so that in 5 years when we can decide if we want this still or not, we have seen least seen some benefit from it,
whether
as
fish
opposed
falls
to
into that
there's a
category or
bucket
not,
of money
you
sitting
know, it
over
would be
there.
debatable. No, obviously we would
Well, fish is only 4,000,
like
so that's not a big amount in this pond.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on Chauncey versus the reservoir. I mean, so yeah. So that clearly, Walter, our goal would be to do some very meaningful things that have the broadest impact if we are able and the appropriate requests come along. That would be our priority.
Okay, Beth, who's remote, has a question.
Yeah.
Hi, Beth.
Yeah, hi.
Oh,
I apologize
Are
because
you muted, Beth?
this,
I can't hear you.
Muted, or we can't hear you.
I don't see her muted.
I am
but
not
can't
muted.
hear her.
Can you see if you can turn
Give
up
a
the
second,
sound?
Beth.
We're going to see if we can turn up
Okay.
the sound in the room.
I think it's on our end, Beth.
okay,
Can she put it in a chat?
Beth, can you try
I can put it. Great, John, you can hear me, but can they hear you?
I don't know. Can you folks hear me?
John can hear her, so it's working on Zoom.
But you can't hear me either, right?
So
No,
John can
they're not
hear you, Beth, but
responding.
we can't. Hold on.
Can we hear John?
Okay.
John, can you speak? Can we hear you?
I already spoke and you cannot hear me.
John either.
It's on our end then. Beth, one more time.
Hi,
There
can
we
this
go.
money
We
be?
got you.
Okay, great. Can this money be used towards the senior center and the new community center building?
It cannot be used for assets that were purchased by the town. And so prior assets that were purchased with CPC money that need improvements or repairs and such, it can, but it cannot be used to purchase town assets.
I don't want to purchase assets. I want to, well, wait.
Improve.
I mean, so could they come to you with a request for something like upgrading the pool or buying equipment for the recreation portion?
It will. There's some pretty clear ramifications on that. So we would take it one thing at a time. It's a challenge for anything that is owned by the town and improvements to it. There are some challenges, but there are definitely some areas I think that would work, and so we'd have to look into those rules. We are all literally just educating ourselves on this. So I would, depending on the specific request, we would go dig into the rules. And frankly, we're going to lean heavily on the state coalition as we get into this to understand those things. So I can circle back if we had a specific, like an improvement to the
But
pool or
it
repair.
it seems like the broad categories are open space, historic preservation, that
Yes.
building's not historic.
Right.
Or community housing,
Those are the broad areas. Recreation's got to be, it's, like the dog park is an example that probably we could support. But
Or a skate park?
Potentially. Yeah, whereas work in the recreation center owned by the town, I think is going to be tough.
Well, sort of one of the things Andrew's brought up before is we have all these trails now, and
Yes.
how do we support their maintenance?
That is
And
definitely an option.
That's certainly an open space
No
issue,
question.
and that might be a source of that funding.
Agreed, and I think you can coordinate with Walk Around Robinson to potentially work with them in that matter as well.
What I've learned, I've been reading a lot of the different grants from a variety of the towns around us, like matching things like that is very prevalent with the CPC. Other people are bringing this grant, can we match that to get the whole thing done? That is a very common thing that's done. And I would expect that would be a perfect case where we try to get a number of people to support something.
Very neat.
Thank you, Walter. That's where my head was going too. So.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions? Everybody ready to vote? You want to make a motion?
I'll try.
Here are the
McMahon.
numbers.
I move to recommend the town vote to hear and act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee and the 2026 Community Preservation Budget to appropriate or reserve for later appropriations monies for the Community Preservation Fund. The estimated amount of $522,000, 5% to Community Preservation Committee administrative expenses, 65% to budget reserves, 10% to open space, 10% community housing, and 10% historical resources.
Bradley, second.
Okay, so McMahon and Bradley, Article 10. Any further discussion?
I just have one question there.
The mic.
I just had one question there, Walter. So the 1% reduction that we have requested, Christy, will this fall in that 1% reduction as well, or this would be separate?
This is not the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what your community preservation revolving account or whatever
Correct.
it's technically called.
That's correct.
What the money, you're basically taking this money and saying 65% of it can be used for anything
Any of the
that
objectives.
we're allowed to use it on. We have to put 10% into 3 buckets, and you get to decide how much administration with the 5. So
Correct.
this would not, nor would the amount
We
change,
can't change it.
by
Okay. Thank
that.
you.
So it's unrelated.
Right.
Related hopefully in the future because you use some of this money and not have things in the budget perhaps. Okay, let's see. So Prashant's here today and Adam's not. So Prashant, you start.
Yep. So Ahuja, no.
Beth, now we can't hear you. What
Oh,
happened to
you're
Beth?
muted again, Beth.
You're muted, Beth.
It was working before.
I'm still thinking. Can I pass for the moment?
Bradley, yes.
Brant, yes.
Oh,
Clap, yes.
yeah, you're next. Right? Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Beth, you can abstain.
Blumberg, no. No, I'm going to vote no.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand the implications of my no, but I think I'm voting no on this.
Okay, 620.
620, and can the people that voted no end up giving me some information?
Reason?
on
Yeah.
why? You don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jim.
All right.
Thank you.
everybody.
Yes, whether it's you'd rather see 30% in admin or 1% or I don't know. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Just trying to figure out what.
About your crazy proposal.
Oh, yeah, true. Okay, very good. All right, so, as I said, Christy couldn't join us tonight, so we are going to move on to what's next.
Public comment?
Let's see if Mr. Savoy, do you have any comment tonight?
Thank you.
I'll send you a PDF file, Walter.
Oh, thank you.
Wilfred Savoy, 41 Chestnut Street. I'm providing you with some rationale and documentation on Article 28, which is a non-binding petition that I've placed on the warrant to limit property taxes, the property tax annual increase to 2.5% plus any taxable new property. Of course, this effort is to address the economic inflation and the capacity of the taxpayers in Westborough are really in a bind because of these conditions. So hopefully this may get some discussion going on what we can do. Prop 2.5 passed in 1980, dramatically changed the budgeting process. Up until that point, basically municipal budgets were created and then taxes were raised to pay for that budget. Prop 2.5 changed that dynamic by first establishing how much money you had to spend and then building the budget to that amount. Westborough has been able to get away from that dynamic because it can exceed a levy limit because of new growth. And I've given you a couple of charts that show that Westborough has a significant amount. The first chart, second page, over $8 million comes from what is called personal property levy. This is new property from primarily businesses, could be inventory, equipment, could be new construction, but always comes from business. We rank third of the 15 communities in this revenue, and it does drive the new the property taxes, the ability to levy more property taxes. So we're very high on that list. We've actually come in first on a couple of occasions. So what we're looking for here is to basically limit the amount of cost that comes in to provide an opportunity for town meeting members to discuss this issue, to voice their opinions. We've heard town officials, including yourselves, over the last several weeks talking about potential cuts and agonizing over how much, and also agonizing over what does the community have to say about this. So I think I've been looking forward to having this petition bring up some of that discussion and some of the positions of at least the people at town meeting. The question could be brought to all of the voters with a ballot question, similar ballot question that would be presented by the majority of the select board, or a voter petition. That could be a similar question, a binding question could be put on the ballot. So as with Prop 2.5 in 1980, when that act was being considered, many people thought the world would come to an end, in that there would be limits on income. And so people look for alternative sources of revenue and cost savings. And I'm just offering a few there in that second to last paragraph, looking at more accurate estimates on our new growth, on local revenue estimates, and also possibly a split tax rate. Those are all areas where additional revenue could be realized. And then in the cost savings area, consolidating of duplicate functions, the town, the school department, and so forth. And I guess consideration is being considered for this Municipal Employment Act, which would also provide municipalities with some capacity to raise meal taxes, lodging taxes, and consolidating other things. But that's in the process right now, has not been acted. So looking at this, Westborough has a unique situation where it has a considerable amount of new growth, which adds to an excess beyond the normal levy limit, which provides this $13 million amount of money. Some people mistakenly think that that's a pot of money that we can draw from. It's just a number that indicates that the town can, if it sees fit, to raise additional revenue up to that level. So we got above the levy limit. And again, that's been accumulated over 20, 25 years. I do point to Ed Behan's paper, which is on your website, that goes into the detail on how we got to this situation. But I would ask that the Finance Committee consider giving support to Article 28, at least, again, a non-binding petition, but support would, I think, generate some, at least some discussion on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, this being a article, I will entertain if you had any questions specific for Fred on this.
Voted.
Because he's actually not, he's a proponent of an article, so I'm willing to
Yeah,
have further
Fred, I guess the
discussion.
question I had asked at our last meeting is, could this legally be a binding article?
Could it be what? Sorry?
Legally be a binding article as opposed to a non-binding?
No, the Prop 2.5 does not provide for the town meeting to limit the levy limit. The only way you can do that through the law is, again, the Board of Selectmen, by majority vote, put this on a ballot question, where they could limit the levy limit, or a local voter petition. We have an issue right now in Westborough where that is not included in our town charter, the ability of a resident to have a petition on the ballot. So that has to be, if the selectmen choose not to go this route, then we'd have to have the charter changed in order to have a voter petition allowed.
So the difference in a ballot, it would go to a town vote when they elect articles. Okay.
It becomes law.
Yep. Okay. All right.
I think there's another possibility there, which is, I might be wrong, but it's called an underride, which you actually remove, you can remove the excess levy capacity, but I might be wrong. That also would require I think, election.
Yep.
It's sort of like an override does. I think it's just the opposite direction of an override. But I haven't studied it to that detail.
Mr. Savoy, so I have to, props to the fact that you spend a lot of time working on this and you do diligent work. Full credit to you for that. I'm grateful for that, because I think it's opened eyes here and it's stimulated conversation. I guess my question arises for this as the question becomes, and then what? We present it, we talk about it. I'm not even sure this is complicated. I don't know how 200 people at 11 o'clock at night, and I don't mean this pejoratively, but like, I don't know what comes out of that conversation. I worry that it becomes an airing of grievances or something like that, but I don't see the and then what that comes out of this.
What I would envision is that it presents before town meeting members there, the reduction or the limitation in increases in property taxes. Do people at town meeting want to limit property tax increases from year to year? When I took this around and got 19 signatures, 17 out of the 19 people signed it. So from that little sample, I can see where people are interested in it and are looking forward to moving forward on it. So I would like to see at town meeting, what would be the sense of town meeting members with this proposition that we would limit property tax increases to 2.5% plus new growth. How do people feel about that? Do people feel, no, we should be continuing to spending and getting the $969 average property tax increases? Or should the town start looking at this? From that, I would think that select board members would see the sense of at least the town meeting members, where we should go with that, get some discussion going on that. I mean, people, if I heard it once, I heard it 100 times in the last several weeks. We need the community input on these tax cuts. I heard it time and time again. This would provide at least the beginning of community response. Not so much talking about specific cuts, but do we want to limit the amount of property taxes that we pay? Should we look other places for revenue? That's what.
Thank you.
Good.
Anyone else?
I guess the only comment I would make, and I don't know exactly how it's written, but in the select board's goals, I believe it says they want to limit the budget increases to 2 to 3%. So in some ways, it's a little different than tax increases, which is another whole formula, but I think it represents something the select board says they want to do and now say they don't think it's possible to do.
Well, two things. One, yeah, I agree. It's much easier to control budgets than it is the exact amount of the tax, because it's a recursive calculation with your revenues, which you don't know. But the other thing is, I suspect the period of high inflation that we just went through probably had a large impact on the ability to come close, for sure. You got anything?
No.
You have a thought, but you're keeping. Okay.
No.
All right.
We really put you on the spot there.
Well, no, he was about
I make
to
a lot
say
of faces.
something. He made
Yeah.
faces. He just-
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So, there are a few more warrant articles that we can vote on. I would like to start basically by rewinding to Article 23, the sewer cost appropriation that we heard from Chris last week, and now Beth's had a chance to review it, I guess. So I'd like to get a motion on that one. Article 23.
McMahon, I move to recommend the town vote to replace Article 53 of the general bylaws by deleting it and replacing it in its entirety as written in the warrant.
Bradley, second.
Okay, more discussion. No more discussion? All set? Okay.
So I did not attend the last town.
Oh, that's right. You were the only one who wasn't here.
I wasn't here, but I did go through the recording.
Okay.
And somebody correct me. I think what I understood of it was essentially that what Josh brought up, that if you have more bedrooms means you pay more. If you have less bedrooms means you pay less. That's the analysis which really you know, at a very high level. I know they were more in,
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the payment, the important part was they allocate you less sewage capacity
capacity
as well,
yes.
which means that if you're building a whole bunch of one-bedroom apartments, before, I think it was like not apartments, houses.
houses,
Every house was allocated some of that.
based on, yeah.
Although
And they
the
would have paid
change to
10
the
grand.
bylaws doesn't do that.
Right.
The change to the bylaws allows him
Allows that.
Exactly.
to go talk to the select board
Select board
to
and
make that change.
Make that change, right, exactly.
But yeah, the financial impact would be more bedrooms,
More
more
money.
sewer cost hookup, but only when your house is built. So it's
I
only
think
really new development or a new building and nowhere else. Probably not very many cases per year now, I would guess at that.
one of the other changes I think I read into it is that where before this would changes in the fee structure would come as a change in the bylaw and a warrant article, it's now being left to the Department of Public Works and the Select Board and will not come before town meeting in the future.
I didn't pick that up out of
I don't
what
think
read.
that's correct.
That was what my rereading made me very uncomfortable with.
I don't think that's correct, because I don't think the existing bylaw has,
I didn't see that. in
sets the
exec-
hookup. I think the select board can change the amount of the current hookup.
That was my understanding as well.
Yeah.
The process hasn't changed
Right. Just
for
the,
rate setting.
for rate setting.
Right.
Just the ability to make a differential rate based on number of units or
And it's been
you know,
10,000
estimated
since
flow.
they've had, I mean,
sewer,
For
since
a
they've
very
had sewers,
long time,
yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, ultimately, I feel like the differentiated rate makes sense, right? Because you are paying for your allocated share of our total capacity. And if you build a giant house for you and your 47 children, you're likely going to use more sewer capacity that, right? And there's always,
It's
we
it's
put
really
up the
about
empty bedrooms and all, but the expectation, right, is more people, more waste, and that has to be set aside for that home.
but it's really about culling the unused permitted flow right now. So if you have a 2-bedroom house right now, this isn't, and they make that change, you're permitted at, they have to set aside the same amount of flow as a 10-bedroom house.
Right, so now
And
the
they want to go
two-bedroom-
back and say, okay, that 2-bedroom house, we're gonna recoup some of that flow, which will allow them to go back and say, we're not at our limit, we're below our limit on what we are permitted for, and therefore we can lift the moratorium.
I don't disagree with what you said. What I struggled with and the questions I was asking last time were, this is not, the fees that are coming in, the fees that we're talking about being changed are the access fees.
Yep.
And those are static regardless of 2-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 6-bedroom, 8-bedroom, period.
Currently, yeah.
Currently.
Why would that change if
It
the
doesn't,
same amount,
it doesn't with this.
it does. He was
No,
proposing
no,
that-
it
It's not-
allows him to go propose it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
it
I
doesn't
don't believe
change
that
it.
it should. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same.
See, I think it makes sense, right? It's that opportunity cost. So if I have 1,000 gallons, and if you have 4 bedrooms, I have to give you 5,000, I can have 2 houses. But now if you only have 2 bedrooms, I can have 4 houses. So it's that opportunity cost. It's that portion of the pie that you get when you connect. So the larger the house, the more pie I have to allocate to you, whether you use it or not.
And the bylaw could be updated to address that without addressing the fee that you're charged to connect.
Correct, but I'm saying that I think the fee makes sense because
The fee doesn't because
Because
the
it-
amount that you actually use it changes and is paid based on how much water you use as a proxy.
correct.
So
But the-
all you're talking about is how much is allocated out of the 100%.
Right, but we can
So-
only allocate 100%.
But we can always go back and change that. That has nothing to do with the fees that are charged. It's a static pipe that is put in. The homeowner pays for it, admittedly, by the town. So the cost is really
the
going
town.
out there and inspecting it. And that should not change regardless if it's a 10-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom house.
So that
It's
doesn't.
not, it's not a cost, it's a fundraising
It's the
technique.
capacity, though.
Okay, well, either way, I mean.
Well, they're
it-
saying they'll charge smaller houses less and bigger houses more, that's all. If you don't like that idea, then it's, I guess, not a good idea for you.
Yeah,
I
and
I
that's
personally
okay.
think that's a good idea.
I think it should be, what they're
It's a
planning to
percentage of the
charge
house.
should be apportioned by the actual use.
But so they have to apportion it based on an estimated use for our share of the treatment plant capacity.
Correct.
And that's where the limitation is. It doesn't have anything to do with what's being installed.
Yes.
So the treatment plant says you can have 1,000, we have to allocate it. And if you want to take a disproportionate share because you're going to build a giant house versus your neighbor's little tiny house, the argument is that you should pay for the share that has to be allocated to you. Whether
That's
you
not
But you
what-
do
that's
anyway in
not-
the
but
current
that's-
system.
I think that's the disconnect I'm having, is that you're saying that they should pay more, but this fee isn't for that. This fee is just for the access.
The
It's
connection.
For the share.
Capacity.
It's for,
It's for the-
No, it's for the
house.
connection.
Tying the capacity
Originally,
to the
it
fee
was for the
is not,
capital
it doesn't necessitate
to
this change to
establishing the
the
plant, but
access
since it
fee.
hasn't grown ever,
You could
it's
easily
just-
rewrite this, leave
it's
the
a-
access fee alone, and change the apportionment. It doesn't require
Right.
changing this access
Right.
fee, which
Right.
is static for everybody, so it should be borne equally by everybody, not based on the size of the property that you're building.
Except for that it's for your use of the treatment plant, and they have to set aside X number of gallons of capacity
According to
for
the
your
current
larger
bylaw,
house.
but they
No,
could
according to, like, the actual rules for the
for
wastewater
the way the
treatment
wastewater
plant
treatment plant works.
limit what Westborough can put
Yes.
in.
But,
And so
but-
we have to have a rule for predicting
correct,
per house
correct.
what your contribution to the wastewater treatment plant would be.
Absolutely. But again, that prediction is in no way tied to having to pay a different amount for the access.
That's right. No, I agree with that, 100%.
Those are
Yeah.
completely
But it's not the
separable
But it's such a
issues.
small
Your
amount
share
of the
of
capital
it.
cost of operating the treatment plant that I'm not as bothered.
I
as
mean,
it-
I'm
by that
okay,
as
I'm
you are.
okay
And
standing on principle, so.
This doesn't change that.
Right.
It's
Chris
all-
mentioned that he was going to
Yeah.
propose it, but this doesn't change it. It doesn't make any change to the fees.
Yeah, I think
structure.
that just enables that conversation.
It enables the
Yeah.
conversation, yeah, which is,
Which I think is the right, not that that's not the right time to
That's
hear your
okay.
feedback.
I-
yeah, yeah,
but
no,
that's-
I don't disagree with you. I
I'm-
mean, I get it.
I think I also want to add that I think that Chris also mentioned if you add units to your existing property, which happens more frequently in what's happening now with housing, that you would also then inherit the cost per additional unit for. Or am I remembering that wrong?
I think
You're
there's a
remembering correctly.
Possibility, but that would be if it was a one-bedroom, $2,500, not the 10,000 with the sliding
Or a
scale.
6-bedroom, you made it 7 bedrooms, or, I mean, so, given what's happening with
Right,
the
no,
housing
no,
market.
it'd be the additional bedroom. You were already on the sewer for the others, if it was anything.
Well, I know, but I do believe that when we talked about the cost, it's definitely for new units, but I think, I recall Chris saying that as houses are upgraded as well, that there would be an additional cost for the cost of upgrade.
The
Yep, you're
added-
remembering correct.
The added bedroom,
For the added, excuse me, for the
So,
added bedroom,
yeah.
yes.
so it would be $2,500,
If that is part of a future change that's made.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay. Anybody
but no
else?
refund if you're,
If you lose a bedroom.
or if you have less than 4.
Right, not going backwards. Okay. Hearing no more, let's vote.
Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, no.
Bradley, yes?
Brant, no.
Clap yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6-2.
620, yep.
All right. 2 more we can potentially knock off tonight. Jane has gotten us some information on the 2 articles of the school, so just sent it out right before the meeting. But we can read it if people haven't had a chance to read it yet. We'll start with the Mill Pond Chiller, which is currently Article 12K. I got that right? And the explanation on, the question revolved around why do we need to do a study versus just get on with it kind of thing. You're replacing something, right? And the response from the schools are, the existing chiller unit is 25 years old, therefore we are not able to do a direct replacement. The new unit, it will come with electrical needs and plumbing connections, thus the need for design engineering. We also need a design to pull a building permit. Through the design phase, we'll be able to explore options that are more efficient. At this time, the replacement is in our capital plan for fiscal '27. So I guess we would see that, since we're doing '26 now, it'll be here next year. In order to provide a cost estimate, we need the design. So that's the explanation, and we'll open it up to any discussion on Article 12K.
12K.
Try and find the actual article somewhere in here.
It's on page 9.
I know, I have like multiple different printouts because I didn't always print out the whole thing. I have to find the right page 9.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So
Yeah.
I don't want to get overly nitpicky here, but I guess my question is, did they get a design proposal? Because 12% design on a $500,000 chiller seems probably about double what it should be. And we're not talking big dollars here, so as long as it's spent wisely, probably doesn't matter. But if there was a design proposal, that would make me feel better.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know whether they have in other words, a quote on what the proposal would be, or is this someone throwing a spitball? And I would guess
I think it's a $500,000 chiller. Let's take 12%, and that's how we come up with 60,000.
And if it's underspent, I think you could use it in the second half if you go ahead. So maybe that, yeah, I think you're probably right. Okay. Yes, okay, here it is. Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Or is everybody ready to vote? Generally? Okay.
McMahon, I move to recommend the town vote to transfer $60,000 from free cash for the purpose of funding the design for Mill Pond chiller replacement.
Bradley, second?
Bloomberg,
You
second.
always say second.
We don't know what to do if you
Yeah,
don't second it.
yeah. By the way, Thursday, Gene's not gonna be here, so we're gonna have to shuffle the deck a bit on the action here. But, okay. Any other comments? Prashant?
Ahuja, no?
Bloomberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brandt, yes.
Clap yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, no.
Okay, 6-2-0 seems to be the way we're going tonight.
All our
But
votes
at least we're
tonight.
mixing it up. All right, next would
12L.
come 12L. So this is regarding I think it's 90K of
70.
70K, okay,
Yep.
of plumbing. And the explanation of why this is not just budget, I guess, is we typically budget small-scale jobs out of the general fund. However, we have reached a critical point of aging equipment that is starting to corrode and that may need to be replaced. Repairing or replacing large-ticket equipment like this is out of our capacity within the operating budget. So it's basically a way to supercharge your budget, but temporarily not increasing it so that next year it's always that big, unless they do it with an article every year, I guess. Be another thing. Comments, questions, suggestions? Everybody ready
So
on this one?
I would just say that I understand the need for this, and I understand the strategy for this, but they're saying that we can't afford it from our current budget for something that is unforeseen. Like, we literally don't know what's coming, but we're just trying, it's a way to build another $70,000 pool to dip into, which I don't doubt that they need. I guess I'm a little leery about this as a method for pulling up another pool of accessible money for something that is unforeseen by its very definition. You know, I would just, so, yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Why do we think it's unforeseen?
I'm reading what it says. Request funds that would be available to support any unforeseen repairs.
There it is. Okay.
And I think that they foresee some of the things that they're talking about. I don't believe that this is, you know, from what I heard, it wasn't a $70,000 taken just as a random stab. I believe they have something in mind. I think I'm inclined to say that because they've been good stewards of the money, that this is something I'm personally going to vote for. But I'm going to push back harder if this becomes the kind of
A
thing
regular
that
recurring
they
article.
or somebody else does to stand up a place to go get money. And it's not a reflection on the way that they do their job. It's a reflection on, you know, the transparency of seeing what it is people are buying in for, and, you know, scheduling and budgeting these things in a different way.
I would tend to agree, right? So I don't love the process of this open-ended capital. We think something's going to break, so we need to have the money. At the same time, I get the argument that we have aging infrastructure and issues are predictable. I appreciate the effort to not just put it in your budget where it is just going to now live forever, right? So I get it, but I'm with you, right? So we think we have issues. We're reasonably anticipate issues this year, so we're going to ask for this. I do think they're good stewards of our money. I also will vote in favor of it, but I certainly wouldn't expect to see every year some open-ended budget request for something always breaks. I am a little bit torn on it. I'm a little uncomfortable with the generalness of it. But
It's also, by being an article, can actually carry over more than 1 year, right? If they
yeah.
spend 30,000 this year, there's money next year, whereas if it's in the budget, it falls back to free cash.
I look forward to seeing
good
how
and
this
bad.
plays out. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing how it plays out.
Yeah.
But I just putting it out there, this notion of a general bucket. And we have aging infrastructure is not unique to the schools. It's not even unique to the schools this year. Like, there are policies and processes and things we do in places. Capital planning project to go through, that we go through this, and most of those things in that project are a lot more concrete.
So I was thinking part of the reason it makes sense also is as a capital project, you can only spend it on this, right? So you couldn't reallocate it to something else, but you could, not saying that they would or are, you could ask for maintenance dollars here and reallocate what's already in your budget.
Yeah.
To that
So
end,
just
I
to
actually
be
want to look and see
clear,
what's
you
in your
guys
budget.
who are talking me out of voting in favor of this are planning to vote in favor of it, right?
Look, I'm actually now questioning and pulling up their actual budget.
Yeah, okay. I
to see what the maintenance line
just
is.
wanted to see if I understood
I'm,
correctly.
I'm doing the same thing, and I think it sets a dangerous precedent. I think it's going to come back every year with some number, and I think it has to be a lot more specific than what we're
Yeah,
seeing
it's
here.
that unforeseen word that you highlighted for me that really.
Such as, there are 6 hot water heaters that are
Yeah.
at their age limit, we should replace them.
Yeah, I would feel a lot better
on the
if
other
it
hand-
were something like that.
But on the other hand, not replacing, it depends what the catastrophe is of them
Right.
failing, but having the funds to replace something so you still have the hot water seems important.
No, I understand.
But maybe not doing it until you need
But to that
it.
end, you could say this is our highest risk item, and so we want to take care of it. If you intentionally go out and replace the item that you think is either costly on a regular basis because you're fixing it repeatedly, or then the rest of the money that's already in your budget should cover the other items.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if this is playing the odds properly, and again, I think we're dealing with people who have worked with this stuff, and in the conversations in Capital, this is, I suspect that they're hedging against more than $70,000 worth of potential things going wrong. So to the 6 chillers
Yeah.
issue, I don't think they're talking about fixing the 1 chiller. I think we have 6 of them, there's a pretty darn good chance 1 or 2 of them will go to a point where we'll need to support it. I think that there's a richer conversation to have around this. I don't feel that this is the right time to put the capital at risk, because this is how they've addressed or they decide they want to address it. But I think that there's a better way to address it going forward, because we cannot have what appears to be these open pockets of money. My 2 cents.
So I just had a question there, or just a curiosity in terms of how they have handled in the past. Didn't they have any sort of contingency funds?
And I believe that's what they said, that they've drawn down enough in the past so that they want to have this ready, if it's needed. So yes, they have, but in the work that they would have us believe, again, I'm not pushing against it, I'm just trying not to put words in their mouth.
Yep.
They have already pulled back on a lot of their contingencies, so that this is how they want to now address this possibility going forward with apparently some set of capital they're concerned about.
Another way to look at it is they're thinking it's more than just maintenance is something you do every year to change the filter, do this, do that. And this sounds like it's a little bit more of replacement. Some minor things, yes, you have in your maintenance budget, but maybe with the number of properties they have, obviously Fales probably doesn't need any of this, but the other ones quite possibly do. I don't know.
So at the time the budget was created, if you look at just the equipment line in their maintenance budget, they have $50,000 is the total equipment line for budget, which is not a huge number given the number of schools, but they had spent $3,400. Granted, this is probably through
That's probably 2 or 3
November?
months. No,
through October. I don't know
maybe
when.
September full numbers.
Yeah.
It's probably 3 numbers of which it's
Right.
summertime.
Yeah.
So, it's
The
hard
time
to
that
tell.
nobody was in the school.
Because-
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ironically, fiscal year '24, they spent $3,400 on equipment.
That's what I'm looking
Oh,
at. is
okay.
their-
Oh,
where-
24.
But that was the 24 expended, so that was at that point in time when they prepared the budget. Their equipment was 3,400, but they also.
No, this
No,
is
that's the
fiscal
full year.
We're in
25,
25 now.
if you're in this year's budget.
Yep. Oh, yeah, so they only spent, I was really looking, it was
Yeah.
only 34 out of the 50 spent last year.
Do we want
They
to
also have an
more
equipment
information?
maintenance line
Sure.
that was 110, and they spent 77. So there was money left in both of those last year.
Yeah, that's something
So-
making me really this.
So, if you guys want to vote on it tonight, I'm happy to vote against it, but if you
Yeah, I was gonna
want
say.
me to vote for it, I would like Jane to get some more information.
On
Yeah, no, I think we've raised enough questions that it's well worth being more educated on the subject before we just assemble our votes.
We have time on Thursday, right?
We won't have time for a while, but it probably
Thursday
somewhere
seems like a
near
good day.
before the warrant
Probably
closes.
sunrise.
Yeah, you guys should.
Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, I think Monday's probably the longest. Okay, I think that's it for
That's all we had.
for
Talked about.
tonight. Yes.
Just curious, when are we intending to vote on Mr. Savoy's article?
Anytime we want.
We did,
Would you like to vote now on it? Or- I mean, I thought I'd let the dust settle and see whether we have any more opinion polls.
I want to go through the material a little
Yeah,
better. I mean,
me
I
too.
kind of skimmed it here.
I'd like to hear
That's all right.
from the town.
Well, we will
From
hear from
Christie, you
Christie.
mean?
Yeah,
Because I think one thing that's missing from this opinion poll, would you like your taxes only to raise 2.5%, versus 8? Yeah, because it's in a total vacuum, that means I just pay less, but I get the same services. But the ultimate question is, would you like to have what would happen with only a 2.5%? So you'd have to have a better idea of that to make that sort of choice. And I understand the importance of, I like the idea of getting people's opinion. I just think when you go to what would be probably a 3 or 4%, somewhere in that range, because this is tax increase, not budget increase, so it's a little
Yeah.
hard to figure it out exactly, but it's probably at least a 3% cut of budget from what we see here, maybe higher.
Unless you find ways to get more revenue or use
Right.
more free cash or all sorts of options.
Free cash doesn't work on an extended basis generally, but anyway, whatever. I don't want to go into that rabbit hole. So I think we ought to, like you said, think about it more and also see what the other, not if there are any other non-binding questions and come back. But I think he's done a great job in providing us some information and food for thought. But as you said, there ain't no free. It's not, you just can't, I get this, but what am I not getting instead? So, which is fine. So I don't know when we'd vote on that, but we would vote before our book's printed, which is the 13th of March. I'm still not sure whether we're going to try and how we're going to do the budget discussion. There was a thought of on March, I think it's 6th, a Thursday, of having a joint meeting, but I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, or whether we'll be just meeting our usual selves.
When is the school board coming back?
I wasn't planning exactly on having them. The closest I would have them is if there's a group meeting on discussing the budget changes. I'm not like I said, I don't know how we're going to get that information yet.
Yeah.
And so that could be at that meeting on the 6th if that one happens. Our real issue is we have very full schedule Thursday, very full schedule Monday. So then we have 3 more meetings before we have to be done with at least our recommendations and everything that's going in the book, including the budget. So there's a lot to do. So I don't know.
Yeah, my only reason, and I'll send them to Jane, but there were a few questions I raised at the budget summit that the superintendent said she would research and get back. I'll have to remember what they were now, but I think it had to do
You
with
could watch the 6-hour meeting.
the substitute custodians might have been one of them.
Okay. No, that's good. Yeah, let's work through our liaisons as much as we can on questions because we're going to have limited time here. Okay. There are no minutes to review. The only other thing I wanted to start talking about is the R&R. And so what I think I will do, given that it seems to work this way, best, because if I just ask people for input, it doesn't happen. But if I send something out with comments, then they can get edited more readily. But we can't do it in the last night like we did last time, or at least I won't be making those changes again that way. That is very difficult for me that most people did not really review them till almost the night or the day that we were our last day. So I really need you guys to do it a few days before because my work schedule in life does not work perfectly by Thursday night and having to get it off to town hall the next day very well. So we need to be conscious of that. If you have articles we voted where you wanted specific comments, feel free to send them to me ahead. And then we also, have to talk a little bit at some point about what we want to say as a general message as well. This is different. Certainly been a different period this year. Very good. So this is an opportunity, I think, were there any liaison reports I should ask?
Yeah, just that Assabet is willing to come on the 6th or the 13th, both Thursdays, if you want them.
Yeah, okay. I think we don't from the straw poll I took. the other day. The 6th, we might be at a joint meeting, or the 13th will be our last night for the R&R, so I think we'll try and get them early in the schedule next year, because they're really, if they come in February, that's a better, February is
Okay.
a much better thing for
I mean,
us.
you could have them come in April.
I'm not all that interested, honestly. I can read their book. They've come, I've seen them 3 times. So for me personally, I don't need to know that much more. And their book that they provide is very filled with information. So unless there's something new and shocking, I don't see a particular reason. They will, so that's my
Okay.
my theory. I think about every other year would be ideal with them, because that gives you some information and not just, a little more changes. And the reality is, volunteer board, we only have so much time, and we don't actually set any of their numbers in their budget. They do, and it's whether, I guess, either you want to opt out of being an ASABET or not, and I don't. I mean, I want to support them. I think they do a good job. So, is anybody else different? No. Okay. Very good. I have a library building committee meeting tomorrow, so that's when we should find out more numbers, I guess. And there should be presenting to the select board ahead of presenting to us, because I think they're doing that next Tuesday. And there's also an information meeting on the 12th of March as well at the library on that same subject. And that's about it. Okay. I think we're ready to adjourn.
Shafford, motion to adjourn.
If we only had a motion.
Bradley, second.
Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Brandt, yes.
Clap, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Thank you, Westborough TV. We are adjourned at 8:12.
Do we have Westborough TV coming Thursday too?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Westborough TV is coming, yes, Thursday meeting.
But it was funny, like in the beginning.